Hello, one and all, and welcome to the next amazing GRIP webinar, which is called Change Agents, How AI Will Transform the Business of Events. So I've had a look at this massive registration list. It is huge. And thank you all for joining. But you are all in the events business, and we are all using AI every day, and everything is changing. I can't even keep up to date with the tools that are changing every 5 minutes. So that's why we put this webinar together with three experts in this particular field. Because this is all part of a big research project we've been doing over the last 3 months, where we've interviewed some of the top leaders in the events business, and three of those are on the webinar today. And so we've interviewed about 12 people, and we've got some great insights to this report that's coming out very soon. We wanted to give you a bit of a sneak preview about how the technology of AI is really impacting every single part of the events business. And so with me today to talk about that is Ben Fletcher, the co-founder and CEO of Mothership, Marco Giberti, founder and CEO of Vesuvio Ventures, and Tim Groot, CEO and founder of this company, Grip. So I'm going to come to you first, Ben. I'd love you to tell us a bit about your background and how you're involved with the events business.
Yeah, I thought that required a bit of explaining because anyone that looked me up will see that the Mothership is a kind of acquirer and operator of e-commerce brands. That's something I've been doing for the last 5 years, but my background is very much in events. I've kind of founded or run probably 3 or 4 events businesses. I'm the chair of a big pharmaceutical events business called Oxford Global, and I'm the founder of a sort of smaller specialist events business for founders of technology businesses called Fast Growth Icons.
Great, thanks very much. And you have got some really fantastic hands-on experience of how you've implemented agents and various other AI tools. So we'll come to that later. Your explosive LinkedIn post that went viral, and that's why you're here. One of the reasons. Marco, over to you. Tell us about your long, illustrious career in the events business.
Yeah, Marco Giberti. I'm an entrepreneur and investor around events, media, and technology for more than 3 decades. Started my career with Apple, quit very early, and started my first business, which was a media and events company. And since then, I was around the industry in different capacity. I collaborate with event founders, co-launching events, and I'm also involved in event technology for quite a long time, way before it was cool.
Thanks very much. Tim, over to you. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Tim, founder and CEO of Grip, and yeah, I've been involved with event tech for about 10 years now. We just had our 10-year anniversary at Grip, so we've seen all aspects from kind of first generation AI and machine learning to virtual events to now everything that AI is bringing to the event technology experience. And we've been interviewing some great people over the last couple of months, which has been very insightful.
Yeah, I'd love to kind of drill into that, Tim. So you and I have been interviewing like 12 industry experts, and we've been looking at the kind of helicopter view, haven't we? And we've been talking to them, and Ben and Marco are just some of those interviewees, talking to them about how does AI really impact events in the short term, medium term, and long term. And seeing as this whole webinar is about this topic, I'd love you just to encapsulate what are some of those themes that are coming out of this research report that'll be coming out very soon.
Yeah, I think the TLDR is that, it doesn't matter where in the world or kind of how people are involved in events, the people that we've interviewed all believe that in person is here to stay. And if anything, is becoming more important in the age of AI, because as a trust accelerator, in-person experiences will continue to drive, a huge amount of value. I think if you look at AI and how it is impacting the business of events, everyone has a slightly different lens based on their background, right? Somebody might have more of a sales background and say how that has impacted events. Somebody else might say, okay, it's changing content moderation and content generation completely. But I do think that fundamentally everyone believes that they're going to be able to do more with the same amount of people, or even more with less people. So it's going to shift budgets away from people and move budgets towards systems and operating systems and automate huge amounts of workflows internally. I think in some cases are thinking about is how it's a tool for audience expansion, right? Like for example, Paul Miller, and now CEO of Emerald and Questex, at that time of just Questex, is like, look, I've got 5 million people in my database in the pharmaceutical space, only 500,000 come to my events. I want to use AI to create in-person experiences or virtual experiences for the other 4.5 million, which I've never been able to get around to, right? So like, I think that's it. There is a way of thinking about how can I create better events that I'm already doing for the 500,000 of people that are coming, or how can I create new experiences for the 4.5 million people that know me but don't currently engage with me physically. So there's like completely different lenses of how you can think about that, and then all sorts of wider economical things to consider.
Yeah, I think that's what we see with these big technological shifts, don't we? Where in the short term, people think, oh, how can I use it to save costs? But in the long term, it's a value creator and it unlocks new different ways of working and new kind of growth levers that we'd never even thought of before. And I find that quite exciting. Marco, over to you. How are you seeing things from your point of view? Because obviously you're working with a lot of portfolio companies, aren't you? That you invest in, a lot of events businesses. How are they seeing the future of events and this kind of impact that AI is having on them?
Look, I think that if you're an event organizer right now, you should be pretty excited about the opportunity for the next, call it, decade. As Tim said, private equity is validating the industry, billions of dollars invested in events acquisitions in the last couple of weeks, which means nobody's arguing that AI is going to replace events. That's the positive. The negative is, or the challenge is, I remember I co-wrote a book, Reinventing Life, 6 years ago. One or two chapters were all about from 3 to 365 and the always on idea around events. And we were talking about how post-COVID events should change. And a couple of industry colleagues, they were telling me, yeah, super cool, but it's going to take decades. Now, with AI acceleration, it's probably not going to take decades. It's going to take months or years. And that idea from moving the 3 days events to a 365 platform is becoming more and more real. And technologies are working extremely well in order to facilitate that value proposition. I believe that if you're an organizer right now, AI is no longer an option. As Tim said, GRIP is 10 years old, and the whole idea started around AI and matching buyers and sellers 10 years ago. It's not new. Now it's very relevant and it's really important. If I'm an organizer right now, if I'm an owner or C-level, I will be thinking, how can I use AI for efficiencies? As Tim mentioned, in terms of saving SG&A money, making my team more efficient, and also augmenting the event experience from a revenue perspective, from added value into my audience for engagement in my community. Every single event category should be experimented with AI as aggressively as possible.
And talking about experimenting with AI, Ben, you've done some great experiments, and something you touched on earlier, which I thought was really fascinating, was the whole piece around proprietary data. The guy who invented OpenClaw, I think OpenAI ended up hiring him. He was saying, a lot of companies are going to go to the wall, and the ones that are really going to survive are the ones that are sensor based, that are taking in proprietary data. And I guess in a sense, events are very similar, aren't they? They have their own data sources. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I'd say yeah, so if you look at events as media businesses, it's not just the content that you produce at events, but also the access to the wider content you might produce if you're producing articles, blog posts, interviewing people. You're generating a lot of highly current information. The point I was making earlier was that the models are learning from historical data. For example, if you ask an AI agent to write your event program, it'll write a very comprehensive event program that looks really good, but because it's not based on current interviews with people in the market, you'll miss the latest stuff, and someone else will have a program that's full of the latest stuff, and you won't have it. We, as media businesses, we have this amazing access to that content. I think that will become very, very valuable. In an extreme case, potentially for someone building an AI model to acquire one of those businesses to just on the basis of the information they can get out of it. So I think those 2 points together of the fact that events events business isn't going anywhere because people are still going to want to meet person to person. You could argue that's going to become more important, but also the content we then create from those experiences is then more valuable. I think that's just a very bright future for events businesses. I can totally understand why PE companies are looking to invest in them.
Yeah, I think it's a similar thing at Grip. We're recording sales calls, obviously with customer permission and everything, and it all gets fed into a big database. So we're using Fathom. And as a marketer, I can start querying what people are saying to come up with better content because I can understand what the pain points are, the gain points are, and that just compounds over time. So as you get bigger, you get better data, and it's all proprietary, and it's an absolute goldmine for me as a marketer. Tim, just thinking about proprietary data, what sort of data should event organizers be really tapping into? Because I'm thinking, if they're using the right tools, they're getting badge scans, they're getting, location data and all sorts. How could they be leveraging that? And it's a data set that an LLM can never get.
So I think that the first one that I think everyone should be capturing for all their events and all their sessions is session transcripts, right? Like I think that's an absolute goal and there is so much you can do with that down the line, like what Ben was saying about how you can turn that into blog posts and other kind of pieces of content, but it could also validate your future content programs. Like for example, for our webinar topics, Hugh and I do something similar now, which um, when we have a new webinar topic, we validate based on all our previous webinar topics, the likelihood of how many people were registered for this webinar based on the topic and the people and so forth. So I think that becomes really interesting. A sort of reinforcement learning and validation system is going to be really interesting when it comes to sessions. But similarly with kind of what people should be attending. So more than ever, it is critical for organizers to try to capture as many of the connections and conversations that are happening at their events as possible, meaning batch scanning at the very least. But if I look at what we do with, for example, manifests of our, click to connect, we capture an average of 20 connections per person. And so you get way better data on who talks to whom. And that becomes really interesting because if you all feed that into an AI, you can, for example, ask it, what are the gap analysis of my network? Who is missing, right? Who should be attending or who should I be adding to my event in order to make it a better networking mix? And so the better you know who is attending and who's connecting with whom at the moment, that is extremely valuable once you start building new experiences on top of that, in my opinion. So yeah, those are kind of two things I would be looking at if I was an organizer.
Marco.
Yeah, I just want to add another
Oh,
point to that. So yeah, I created a whole lot of stuff over the last, I don't know, so 8 or 9 months. I built a load of use cases, and some of those we've then developed into things that actually work day to day. But one of the early ideas that I had that made a lot of sense is we do a lot of kind of customer surveys. And in the old days, the way you did a customer survey is you asked every single person the same question. And so you got a lot of answers, but quite a little bit of information from those people because no one's going to spend 5 hours completing your form. But with AI, you can have much more of a sort of intelligent tree structure that depending on what they answer to one question, they get asked a load of different questions. So the same survey out to your audience can extract a ton more information, and you can get highly personalized information on everyone. So that's partly good for thinking about what's going to go into your program, but also when you want to market to those delegates, like all your attendees should be completing some highly personalized attendee registration, which gives you a load of information. I mean, my idea is actually what happens is eventually everyone's going to have their own markdown files they're using for their AI agents, which puts all of their kind of context about what they're trying to achieve in their business. And that is just fed straight in. You say, can you kind of upload your kind of markdown file of your objective, or get the AI to answer this survey for me with stuff that you're happy to share, and you'll extract tons of really good information. And that's really going to improve the quality of the marketing you can do for people. It's how you can recommend them a personalized agenda on the day. You can recommend them personalized people that they should meet, whether that's sponsors or other delegates. And that whole matching should become incredibly much more effective because the availability of that information should just get much, much better.
Can we just drill down on the markdown file a little bit, Ben? So it's just explaining it to our audience a little bit more around, agentic, how all this stuff works. just explain it to me as like I'm a well-educated 12-year-old.
Yeah, actually, I saw someone had put a question in the Q&A about prompts, and I think prompts is, very, not trying to be insulting, but it's a very kind of last year way of thinking about things, because agents are so great, and a prompt, you're trying to give the AI all of the context you can into a prompt. So you write a very complicated, well-written prompt. The whole point about agents is they're constantly learning and building up this memory of you. So you don't have to prompt them. You create, and this is where the markdown files come in. The markdown file is a very easy machine readable file. And rather than uploading a PDF of your program, for example, which the computer then has to read as a PDF and it costs money as well. Token use is much higher. It converts it into a markdown file, which is much more readable. So it just enables it to get the context quicker. So you'll have multiple markdown files giving your agents context on what they should do in specific situations, information about you as a business, what you're trying to achieve. It's just, that's how people talk about these context windows. That's what the AI is sucking in and using as its reference for when it makes a decision or gives you a response. So you can have you wouldn't want to try and write that level of detail every time you did a prompt, but you can build it up over time. And the whole point about the agentic thing is partly it'll update that itself. It'll have an memory MD file, which it constantly keeps, markdown file, which it keeps updated. But you can say, here are my ways of working. Here's the things that are important to me. And you can keep those updated, or the AI can keep them updated for you if you prompt them to do that. And that's how you get much better use out of the agents. But when you say give it to you as simple, that unfortunately you have to do a lot of this stuff to really learn how it works, I think.
Yeah, and I think we're in 1996 of the internet. It's still all over the place. And I think at the moment we have these markdown files. So as Ben says, treat them as instructions that the agent has and has some sort of guardrails. But I think what they're setting us up for in the future is that you don't need prompts because the agents will just be working for you. It'll be creating apps for you. It'll be creating software. It'll be creating experiences. It'll be booking you events. And that is, the far future, but I think that is the direction we're actually going in. Let's talk about some practical applications. So thank you for the questions. They're coming in, by the way. We're going to answer them as we go. Everyone registered, they answered, I'll put a question into the registration flow. So we've got a bunch of those as well. We've got a lot to go through. But while we're doing that, Ben, your kind of viral LinkedIn post, you created something was it for Oxford Global? I'd love us if you could kind of share that and talk us through how it works and why you did it.
Yeah, do you want me actually just screen share and show it?
Yeah,
Or
if you're
just
able
talk through
to.
what
I think that would
I try
help.
and just I'll just do 2 minutes because
Yeah, perfect.
just hopefully give you a bit of insight into it. Here we go. Okay, so basically the background is I built, as I say, all of these use cases for Oxford Global, and a number of them have been developed into kind of fully functional kind of systems. I then shared what I'd done, and so many people said, "Oh, can we have a look at it? Can we have a look at it?" I thought, well, I can't really do lots of calls with individuals. I can't also give them access to the Oxford Global system because but what I did was I put it public so that I just created another version. And basically, this is all about kind of it's best to think of it as a virtual SDR. So it finds sponsors and does targeted outreach to them. But the very basic, to whiz through it, what you do is you have your own events up in there. This is the event Fast Growth Icons that I founded. We do Fast Growth Icons and CFO icons. So the idea is you put a load of context on your event programs, delegate lists, speakers, and so on. So it's got all that context in there. Then you put in your competitor websites, or it can find, the AI can work out what your competitors are. And it then looks for sponsors on those websites. You can also import your clients, or you can connect it to your CRM to do the same thing. But if you can import clients, it knows which of the sponsors it's finding you're already working with. You can also import all of your non-client sponsors, because all the stuff we're doing about matching to events and doing outreach would be relevant as well. The lookalike function is just saying, look at your sponsors or the prospective sponsors that are a really strong match for your event. Go out and research and find some people that look like those sponsors. Again, I didn't want this thing of only finding sponsors that was sponsoring competitors' events last year. I mean, what it also does is we run it every week. So you pick up as soon as a new sponsor goes on to a competitor event. But I want to say, find me sponsors that are like this, that maybe have recently landed a load of funding, because those are going to be really hot sponsors. They're going to have big marketing budgets, and you want to be the first person to get them onto your events. So it goes out and does all of that research, and it finds a whole lot of sponsors. And you get a bit of information about what tier of sponsorship they sent and what events they were on. So you can quickly see the people that are doing the most events. It then uses the information you have about your events and the kind of crawling of its website is done to match it and give it a kind of score. So these are not scored, but it scores them. Then the SDR does a whole lot of stuff that I can't go through all of it, but basically it does more enrichment. It connects to things like Apollo or Lucia to import contacts and enrich those. It goes out and it does some research to see how big the companies are, what kind of tiering they are, because they get revenue information, employee information, and so on. And then there's some very much human in the loop. So the humans have to say, are these matches correct? Are these contacts the right contacts? But once you've chosen them, it then puts them into outreach, and it creates a kind of tailored, personalized email based on the event. So I can see someone's actually signing up for it while we're speaking. Yeah, but sign up for it. It's totally free, unless you want to use my tokens. There's a charge for that, but you can connect your own AI platform and just play around with it. And feel free to totally rip off the idea. I mean, just use it as a kind of proof of concept. But I think the thing. So one thing is that is a system. It's not fully agentic. The best way to make it work is to connect via MCP your Claude or your Codex, and then you can just talk to it. And I think this is where we're going with all systems, is it'll be less important what the user interface is like, because you'll just be able to talk to Claude. Claude will have all your context. It knows what you're trying to achieve. And you say, can you just do this for me? The dream for me is you come in every Monday and Claude has operated the system. It's found all the new sponsors that are sponsoring competing events. It's found the obvious lookalikes. It's assessed them and said, here are the 5 people that are most suitable. And by the way, I've already reached out to the kind of marketing and the CEO on LinkedIn, and I've sent them this tailored email. And it's just doing all of that kind of business development work for you. So yeah.
And so it was fascinating. How much work went into this, and what tool did you use to build it?
Well, that's built on Lovable, and a lot of work. So I sort of mentioned about doing these proof of concepts. It was so quick to get to proof of concepts. In a couple of weeks, I developed like 8 different prototypes for stuff you could do. But to actually get it to work and connect with other systems, that was a huge amount of work. And then surprisingly difficult to get people to actually use it. I think it's the same thing in any it's a bit of software. And if you just had a CRM system and you just switched it on and said, hey everyone, we've got this great new CRM, surely we'll get ROI. No, you have to train people to use it. It's been difficult to get it used. And even to switch it from being just Vox for Global to live, I really thought, this will just be a couple of days work. It ended up taking me like a couple of weeks, which is really annoying. But I'd sort of, by that time I was committed. So please do use it and get some value from it and make the whole thing worthwhile.
Some questions come in about it. What is the name of this tool, says Lisa?
Well, it was called Sponsor Finder, but I knew I was doing this webinar and one other, so I've given it a name, which is Assyrio. I mean, it was just an available URL.
I like it. And
you go to assyrio.com and then you can sign up there.
How protected are the details, such as importing delegates to the system? Would a competitor event be able to pick up my details?
No, it's all GDPR compliant, and it's your own personal account, and only you can access it. You and anyone obviously that you give access to, but no one else can see the information on there.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Really, really good. And then last question is, what site or what systems are you using for agents? I heard you say Lovable, but it seems like, Claude.
So Lovable isn't for agents. So I think there's 2 things. There's using AI to build systems, and there's using AI for intelligence, and they're 2 quite different things. So this is just the amazing thing is someone like Lovable or Claude Code or whatever. There's loads of them, Cursor. Just able to build your own systems for things that never really existed before, something that's entirely personalized for you. for agentic work, I really use Claude. I mean, I was really ChatGPT originally, and then I went for Claude because co-work. But then ChatGPT now does Codex, so OpenAI does Codex. So they're pretty much they're kind of similar. I get into some very geeky conversations with people about which ones are better, and some seem to be better for others, but I'm not entirely sure whether that's right. But they seem so similar to what they achieve. I think just use what. Because the great thing is that when you create these markdown files, if you decide to swap over to a different one, you can just take all of that markdown structure and it will just pick up. So it really is like a commodity background. I'm sure OpenAI and Anthropic would hate to hear people say that.
If I can add something on this topic, Ben,
Yeah.
I speak with investors on a daily basis about AI investments and capital deployment and whatever. The best investors are saying, don't rush into it. This is changing so fast. You have a new winner every week, which means if you're an organizer building in any of these systems, you've got to be flexible to change and adjust on a regular basis because the amount of innovation, the speed, and the capital that is going into AI is going to make an amazing new number of opportunities in terms of technology tools that could and should be available for all of us.
100%. I mean, there were definitely things that I started building. Like as soon as I started building this agentic stuff, I was like, I want something that's going to read my email, check my Slack, check my Drive, give me a weekly or daily update of what's important. That's just been built much better than I would ever be able to build it. But I spent quite a lot of time doing that. These things will all appear. So I think if you're going to, but I think you do want everyone to be using AI. We'll get into those use cases a bit further on, I think.
Well, I'd love to talk about how we kind of actually access all of this intelligence. You talked about MCP, and I'd like to kind of get into where that's going because I think that'd be really, really useful for our audience. Until I get there, I just want to give a message from our sponsor. And again, that sponsor, yes, you're right, is Grip. It's us. And our sponsor message is we have another webinar coming up next month, 29th of July. We're going even deeper into AI tools, and this is the AI toolkit for event organizers. It's those AI tools you need and how to use them. Obviously, Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey is coming out next month, so we've gone with the kind of Greek god theme. You too can have the power of Zeus in your hand with Thunderbolts with AI. We have Ellen McCormack. She is from Clay. Which is the big AI tool that people are using for GTM, for go-to-market, sales and marketing now. And Alla Williams, founder of the Hook Studio, she was a judge on the Event Tech Live AI Edition Awards. So she's seen all of these tools that event organizers are using. That's going to be a really great webinar. So please do scan the QR code. I'll put the link in the chat as well. And now let's talk about MCPs. Because you brought it up, Ben. It's a way of, connecting your LLM of choice, your AI application, Claude, Cowork, ChatGPT, to external providers. And Tim, you've got a bit of a news announcement, haven't you, around MCPs?
Yeah, I think so. At Grip, we of course have been interviewing all these people and understanding how many organizers, like the ones Ben is involved in and the ones Marco is involved in, are using these agentic tools and want to use them. And I think for us as a UI and a system of record, we want to make sure that we can be part of those agentic workflows. So we are this week launching our MCP. That is going to allow organizers to start interacting with their events on Grip to interrogate how the event is configured, how it compares against other events that they've configured on Grip, continuously monitor them, understand what actions they should be taking. We're really excited about that because I think that there are so many of these workflows that we're going to be able to facilitate thanks to this MCP. And I really look at it as kind of those different layers, right? Like you've got where the data sits, right? So Grip is a system of record in the sense that we hold sessions, speakers, companies, registrations, people with their custom profile fields, and so much more. But it is also a system of record in terms of connections, meetings, leads, and so forth. So if you've got a bunch of agents talking to each other from a participant and an organizer and exhibitor angle, there still needs to be one place that agrees on where is the meeting taking place at the event? Is it at the booth? Is it in the networking area? What table in the networking area, and so forth? And that's where Grip can provide a really powerful role. And then there is this agentic layer. Like some people are building their own, like Ben is, so you can build your own UI on top of that. So I think that we're going to be a plugin to that, right? Just as other systems might be, or organizers are working with us to create them. So there is this whole agentic layer, and I think that's what we're going to be able to facilitate at Grip as well. So already working with some organizers and some really cool stuff in that space, fully personalized web pages for outreach based on Grip registration and insights data that are created on the fly. So, kind of an enhancement to some of what Ben is doing. So there's a lot of interesting things that are happening and that are going to be facilitated by the MCP that we're launching later this week. So yeah, exciting times.
Yeah. And if you want to sign up for the beta, have a look at Grip's website. There is a link there. I'll put it in the chat later and you can just register your interest. Marco, I want to come to you about, how you get started with some of the AI implementation. In our chat we had in the prep for this webinar, you talked about, build, partner, or buy. And obviously there are different strategies here. Ben's going for the build strategy. You're advising a lot of event companies. How should they approach, implementing some of this AI? Because it's not an easy thing to do, is it?
No, it's not. And I will start emphasizing the difference between a big organizer with hundreds of events. I'm coming from Reed. I sold my company to Reed Exhibitions and spent some, 12 years with them. And I understand the complexity around big organizers with hundreds of events in different regions, in different industries. Up to the other side, which is a founder building from scratch. You may heard we created a Events Venture Group, which is a group of events investors in the US, and we're backing what we call the next generation of event entrepreneurs. And I have the privilege of spending time with young founders building events from scratch. I said last year on a seminar with this group that I was looking to meet with the first AI-centric event organizer, which means someone that is building an event with an AI-first mentality. Now I'm talking with two, and this seminar was in December, which means you have a new generation of event organizers thinking AI first, which is fascinating because they start the pre-launch plan thinking from a completely different mentality than the Informa or the Reed or Clarion or Hive of this world. Which means I believe that innovation will continue to happen on an entrepreneurial level. If you are a small company with 5, 10 employees, 1 or 2 shows, you can do wild things with AI that the big guys, they will take them years to do that because of their tech stack, complexity, bureaucracy, culture, whatever. I think that it's a fascinating time for builders who are still small and they can be very bold experimenting with AI. Going back to your point, each event is different, each region is different, each industry engagement with AI is going to be different. I think that the big guys will try to create layers for hundreds of events, which is great and will generate efficiencies. But on the other side, you have to think if you're running a pharma show, what is important for your pharma buyers or pharma sellers and how those buyers and sellers will interact on a different basis. And I believe that AI will help a lot on customization and making the whole experience and ROI better. But on the other side, it's like if you compare right now the big tech companies, they're already generating hundreds of millions of dollars of efficiencies because of AI, because of their scale. I think that we're going to see similar cases in our industry. The big guys are going to generate SG&A efficiencies, operation efficiencies, marketing efficiencies. Let's be honest, that's probably going to generate some people will be losing their jobs. This is happening in every single industry, and I don't think that we're going to be the exception. On the other side, I think that we're going to see an amazing opportunity for a new generation of organizers competing head to head with the big guys based on technology, based on innovation. And now that innovation and technology is way more affordable than 10 years ago, which means it's going to be a bumpy and turbulent time. Yes, I don't think that it's going to be smooth. But of course, as an entrepreneur, I'm most of the time optimistic, and I think that it's going to be fantastic for the industry. And as we said in the beginning, we are lucky to be in an industry where the value proposition is not discussed. We're not in one of those industries that investors are saying this industry is going to disappear. And with that opportunity, I think that it's going to be a very, very attractive next decade ahead.
Yeah, I think what's really exciting about what you're saying is this new breed of event organizer that are AI first. I do wonder, Ben, if Sam Altman's talked about the first. We're going to see the first billion-dollar company that's from one person alone. There's a single founder, nobody else works with the company. Do you think we're going to see similar things in the event industry? Clearly, you need operations and other things that needs to happen in real life. But do you think we're going to see fast followers who are going to be, nipping at the heels of the informers by using this technology?
I think there's a lot of the jobs that we do in events that are hard. If you've got salespeople doing in person, face-to-face meetings, that's not going to be replaced. Obviously, you've got people that are going to have to go to events as well. I think it'll be hard. Just to reflect Marco's point, really hard for people with entrenched processes and systems and people to change to be kind of completely AI first. Maybe someone will rise up and will operate in a completely different model that we haven't really foreseen yet. But that they'll survive sort of because it happens to work for them by chance. If you see, I mean, there'll be 1,000 people all trying to do it. One or two of them will be very successful, and people will like, oh, that's how to do it. But if you try to make that change now as a big company or even any size of company, you might choose one of the 998 models that looked sensible but doesn't actually work. So I don't think we know what that's going to look like. We know that we can definitely do the work we're currently doing with fewer people. I mean, this sort of SDR role a lot of people will have if they've got people in India currently doing this sort of low-level research, enrichment of contacts. Those sorts of jobs will definitely disappear. But the people that build those sort of very, very low employee businesses, it'll look like they did it on purpose once they've been successful, but lots of other people would have tried to do it and failed. And I think it's a very high risk for us to suddenly say, hey, we're just going to replace all of our people with AI agents. And particularly, I think I was going to mention this thing of the kind of march of nines. It's so easy with AI to do something that's like 80%, 90% effective. But to get it to 99% effective will take you at least twice as long and possibly 10 times as long. And then to get to 99.9 times, again, the same amount harder. So if you've got processes where you're happy with 90%, that's great. Or if you can identify when it's done it correctly, the human just kind of manages the edge cases, those sort of things we're going to do. So that's going to be a lot of kind of basic administrative work is going to be replaced first, rather than the really high value add stuff like researching programs, selling to sponsors. So I think, could you reduce your headcount by 10%? Yeah, I think that's pretty plausible, but it's not going to be overnight either, because you're going to have to do something and prove that it works and then build on it. And then you couldn't just say, oh, AI could do all this SDR work. Well, let's just get rid of all the SDRs. I mean, what's happening in Oxford Global is I've built this whole system that should theoretically replace all of this work, but we're still very much got those people, because we just have to double check and make sure that there's a lot of checking. But gradually, as we get more confidence in it, we'll turn more over to the AI. But there's no, unfortunately, all my life I've been looking for the sort of silver bullet that will do everything for everyone. But no, it's going to be an iterative improvement process.
Tim, what do you think about that?
Yeah. So exactly what Ben is saying. People always have the tendency when a new technology like this comes along to be like, oh, this is the shiny new thing that I could be building with this technology. And we see this all the time, like inside group as well. People are like, oh yeah, but I could now be doing this. And they, don't think about all the things that are already doing on a day-to-day, but they start to build something new. Whereas I've had this like rule for the last 6 months internally in terms of automations. I say it should not require a change from people, and it should not require new data to be entered or administered by someone. So a really good example of that is post-sales call discovery notes, right? New business salespeople has a sales call, and now they go into Salesforce and they enter some notes like, oh, customer was a fit. This is the prospect, this is what they do, yada, yada. That's a really highly manual process which doesn't need to exist. So what you do is you fully replace that with AI. You take the transcript, you like read all the context of what Grip does, and it just creates all the fields in Salesforce. We're happy with 92% accuracy there. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be entered, needs to be directionally right, and it needs to be present for every single new business meeting. What now happens is that I've saved 5 hours across the sales team for that no longer has to do that. Okay, great. Now they can do more sales calls or they can go and do something else. I stress this across every single team. Support, I had a similar situation last week. First, look at your team, analyze what they're doing on a weekly basis, and if you can take some of these low value tasks and just automate those away completely, right? So you're no longer dependent on whether somebody is sick or not, or on a holiday or whatever, just so that they're fully automated away, so that then you can free up that time to go and do something else, I think is critical. Or review whether if you take the human out of the loop, whether the process has to exist in the first time. Regarding the 10, like the kind of $1 billion business, I believe that what we will see a $10 million event launch, meaning an event organizer that generates in their first year of operations 10 million in revenue. There are a couple of events in the AI space that got pretty close already, and they'll do that in two ways. One, ticket price. So the revenue per employee inside customers, right? People that go to events is going up. The key metric that all of these AI businesses are looking at now is revenue per employee. The average, I think, like 5 years ago was about 500,000, right? Like for companies like Adobe and Salesforce and Google and so forth. That's probably going to go to 5 million, right? So that's going to be the revenue per employee. Well, that means that the time spent per hour or value per hour has gone up. So therefore, your ticket price, let's say a typical premium Convex, right? Like a Money 2020 or ShopTalk or HumanX or BHT or whatever. All of those events might charge something like $2,000-3,000. I think that that's going to go to $15,000 to $20,000 per ticket in 3 years' time. These new breed events, they're going to find ways to create a hugely more premium ticket price, and that is can only be done when you launch a new event. You could never incrementally increase the value prop so much that you can go from a 2 to a 20K ticket price. So you need to create something completely new that is 10 times better, but also 10 times more expensive. And then if you combine that with AI agents probably becoming the primary discovery tool, right? Rather than Ben saying, hey, yeah, but you need a salesperson that goes to a competitor event that convince the sponsor to go to my event. Instead, the field marketer will just write into Claude, which event should I be going to? And if you've manufactured your audience and your set up correctly, you should be on the top of that, and you should be able to help, kind of validate that really high ticket price. And I think those factors together are going to be the thing that will result in huge launches and people being completely caught off guard by an event creating in 12 months time that is 10 million plus in revenue. That's my bold prediction. And see Marco smiling.
Let me argue a little bit. I love $10 million launches, but they're risky. I would rather have 10 or $15 million on year three and build the audience on the right way. Some events are easy to monetize from sponsorships, and some organizers are maximizing sponsorship too fast. And you want to keep a balanced buyer seller and ratio. And dealing with EVG founders on a regular basis, sometimes they pitch us. I said, I'm going to launch a $10 million show. And it's scary. You got to be careful. You got to scale with the right buyer seller ratio. You got to scale with the right ROI on your community. But I'm with Tim on the fact that it's a fantastic time to build and launch and compete with established players. I believe that competition is going to be brutal, and events that are number one for decades are probably going to lose those positions with newcomers that they have a different playbook. Again, changing the playbook for an established event, and I was there, it's not as easy as it sounds. I don't want to name any event, but I think that some of the number one events for decades are going to be losing their positions soon because they are not going to be able to change fast enough. All these new generation of events are doing models where the traditional revenue playbook is not the same. I'm seeing monetization on subscriptions, on online education, on things that The legacy events are not able to do those things because their community are not validating those brands for online education. Again, I don't want to name events, but some events you go to a trade show for 3 days and you forget about the event for the rest of the year. Those events are going to have a hard time educating that community online and selling subscriptions and content and stuff like that. Branding is critical, and legacy event branding is 3 days per year. Goodbye, I'll see you next year. Which means I believe that's why I'm on the builder side during the last 5 or 6 years, and I'm super happy because it's way easier to disrupt and innovate when you don't have all these legacy technologies and brands and things that makes your day-to-day way more difficult and challenging.
Classic innovator's dilemma. Good book, worth a read. It can conceptualize everything we're talking about today. Right, thank you guys. I'd like to come to each of you and see how people can contact you because this has been genius conversation. I think people will want to continue the chat. Tim, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, Tim at grip.events. I'll put my email address in the, how do I do that? Oh, in here. So yeah, everyone can contact me at Tim at grip.events or find me on LinkedIn. Those are the two best ways to find me.
Great. Marco, how can people talk to you?
LinkedIn as well, and I'm writing my email here. That's it.
Lovely. And Ben, if people want to try out your system, obviously, I think they just log on, don't they, to your URL, but how should people contact you?
Yeah, they can go to asirio.com and sign up, or yeah, LinkedIn. My Ben Fletcher is the whatever the LinkedIn dot slash Ben Fletcher is me on LinkedIn. So you can find me there. I'll put my email on here.
Well, thank you very much. And obviously, if you want to join the next webinar, it's coming up July 29th. Please do scan the QR code or go on Grip's website to register. All that's left for me to say is thank you to my three amazing panelists. I learned a lot today. We know AI is going to change the world, but it seems like it's going to change the events business as well. So thank you to my amazing panelists for joining. And thank you to everybody else for coming along and watching. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks, everyone. See you
Thank you.
soon. Bye.